That's our vision, to help them to find themselves by getting connected with their roots, their DNA, and our creative ancestors that had forged a way for us.
This podcast is proudly supported by the Ōtara Network Action Committee, ōNAC Community-Owned, Community-Driven and Community-Led.
Kia ora koutou. Nau mai, haere mai, ki tēnei kōrero, te kōrero o We Are Ōtara. Ko Judy Spate taku ingoa, and this afternoon it is my thrill to introduce you to the legend that is Sully Paea. Sully's not only known internationally for his incredible vision and youth work, but he is adored throughout New Zealand. I think if you use Wikipedia and check out Sully Paea, you'll find out that he is the godfather of youth work in Aotearoa. And it's been my honour to get to know that man over the last nearly 15 years. Not nearly 15 years, actually over nearly a decade. I remember, and Jeff Woody and I were just reminiscing about being in the Ōtara Town Centre in 2015, and that was our first big community outing there, and Sully was just an absolute legend trying to support me through that. So aside from all those things that you guys all know him as, to me he has been an incredible visionary that has really helped me and Tony create the vision that is becoming Accelerating Aotearoa. And for that I'm eternally grateful. This morning we talk about Sully's vision for the future and his vision for the role of education and how education could be maybe more effectively tweaked to meet some of our kids that are underserved, at risk in Ōtara, but also across South Auckland. Sully's vision is fresh. It's really grounded. It has its heart in the past and in the future. And I urge you to take the time to listen to this podcast, because we're going to make it all come together. And, as we know, there's the whakatauki that says, if you know where you come from, you know who you are and you know where you're going. Kia ora. This morning it's my great honour to be sitting with Sully Paea, who, I don't want to use a shallow word like hero. I was so amazed and delighted to meet you, Sully, when I first started hanging out in Ōtara. And I knew all about you, of course, but to actually, over the last few years, to have this opportunity to walk with you on so many exciting journeys, and have this opportunity to sit down with you today and talk about how we might use that knowledge to bring us through to the future. Just to recap, the first thing is that the theme for today, as we're just talking about, is navigation. So bringing the skills from the past into the future for our whānau, for our kids, for our community. And when I think about what we've been doing since I've known you here, is that we've served on the ōNAC board together, we've served on the Waterways and Lakes board together, we've been honoured at Accelerating Aotearoa to have you on our board as well. Not that there's a lot of meetings, but I feel hugely blessed as an individual, but as, I guess, someone that's trying to give to this community to be able to work with you. So today's conversation is going to be about the journey and about how we navigate, I'm hoping, and acknowledging the huge wisdom that you bring to that.
Good. Thank you, Judy. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I love talking about history. I love going back and look at things. It's looking from a different perspective. And today is that very thing. And that's at this point of my journey, I'm looking back. Got to look back to move forward. And so the items that we see here as part of that, and that is that discover some things that I had missed in my journey. So I'm going back to learn from that so I can move forward. And so, navigation is the word of the day, that how we can navigate ourselves from here as a community to move forward.
So should we start? If we start there, that's a good place to start. Maybe what are those key things that you're now seeing, looking over your shoulder from the history, to take forward?
I think, let's go back. When I was growing up, there were a lot of things that I did not fully understand at the time. I heard the thumping of the people building canoes, building the waka in the neighborhood. I heard the conversation of men who talks about fishing, hunting, all that stuff that men does. All that stuff I hear when I was young, never really take much notice, never really thought much about what they were talking about, the clouds, the leaves of the coconut trees, all the issues in regards to hunting, fishing, and life in general. So,
maybe just for those of us, our viewers, just remind them about where you were, where that early childhood time was.
I grew up in the island of Niue. It's the big rock. My early, from the age of pretty much as a baby, right through to my early teens, I grew up in a village where it was a little bit lag behind the technology. And so I grew up in the bush, pretty much. I grew up in learning and understanding when to fish, where to fish, how to hunt, and all that stuff. So we live off the land, and a lot of things that I learned, and a lot of things that I really didn't really think much about at the time, including the canoes, the journey with the canoes, and the language that I hear back then. They never really make much sense to me until years later. In fact, it was only just in the last 5 years that I can look back and say, I'm beginning to hear the voices. I'm beginning to hear the conversations. I'm beginning to hear stories of that stuff that I really didn't think much about. And then I begin to piece that all together and realize I'm missing something. And so that is what my journey is. In the last 5 years, I've gone back and relearn and learn and understand how our people live, how they navigate their way around things and survive, and they've done really well. And what you see, the items here, is all part of that. Is that I want to capture that and bring it to the modern day. The dreams, the vision, the conversations, all that, the stories. And so that has come to life in the last 5 years, I would say, to develop it, more so in the last 2 years. Since the lockdown, it's given me the opportunity to be able to sit down and look at navigating our way around. How can we move forward from here? So that's the reason why I've taken this path.
Wow.
And work on that.
Yeah. So thinking about the dreams, the visions, the stories, how, firstly, how do you package them up for the kids and the whānau of today? How do you capture? Because I'm sitting there while you're talking, and in my mind, I can smell the umi fire, and the dust. And I've never been to Niue, but I've been to some of the other islands, and to me, it's there. I can feel it, the hot sun and and everybody being really chilled. But how do we package that up to bring it with the dreams and the stories and the visions for our whānau in 2021?
Yeah. Well, for me, I had to go back to that environment. I had to go back to Niue to capture that. And when I left Niue back in 1968, I burned my bridge. I want nothing to do with. I don't want to go back. That's it for me. I'm done. I'm gone. I don't really want to look back. But I was wrong. I went back, and as soon as I hit the ground, it was like something had come, a light has come on, and I realized that I had made a big mistake, and regret the fact that I did not teach my kids the culture and the language. Deeply regret that one. And so, I had to re-spark that fire inside me that I didn't know I had. And so that came alive, and much more has given me much more, far beyond. And so now, fast forwarded, how I would like to package it, and this is why one of the reasons why I want to get particularly into the waka journeys and the great history of our people and the migration long before the white man came to the scene, and realized that they are doing things, that they are accomplishing great things with very little technology in terms of machineries and chainsaws. And how do they build these great, big, huge wakas that we see out of very limited? They were very creative people. I've learned that our history, our ancestors, they learned so much stuff, understand so much with very little help, very little machineries, no chainsaws, no chisels, no axe. How do they do that?
Yeah.
So I was fascinated about that, and I thought, I'd like to go back and learn. And what I have learned has enriched me greatly. And so back to your question is, now, how do we package that today? So very little, very little bit by little bit, we're doing that in a small way, and starting off with the little stuff as you see here, is that, and while you're doing it, I'm telling a story, and from there gradually build. So right now it's doing just that, giving them that little bit of a taste of what's to come.
Yeah. So I guess I'm thinking about a whole ton of skills that are woven into building a small waka or a big waka. So, you've got the whole engineering character factor, the maths, that whole scientific knowledge. You're talking about how the coconut palm blows and the water. I know that Niue's masterminded a lot of that understanding of the currents and how that helps with navigation or works with navigation as well.
Yeah.
And so this is not something that stands alone. This is not a craft exercise.
No.
And that's the most important thing of all, isn't it? This is about life and fundamentals of life.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's our identity.
Yeah.
It is who we are. It's our culture. It teaches you education. It teaches you the maths, the English. They were learning that long before the word. They even know what the word means.
STEM. I don't think people talk about STEM much until the last 10 years.
Yeah, when I built these canoes, and I look at the ingenuity that they have come up with, and with lack of and not knowing the understanding of science and physics and all that stuff. And the thing is, it works, it floats. How does Māori build those great big wakas and travel from Hawaii to Aotearoa? That's a huge accomplishment. They never talk about that stuff. They never talk about the engineering of the building of those these great vessels that had done and accomplished all that.
Yeah.
So, when I look at these, I look at that great, huge education foundation that can that we can build on, because in there you learn everything about science, everything about physics, everything about English, maths, the whole thing. So that's what draws me into it. And back to your question of how do you package it, I thought, well, if we can somehow create this and gradually build on this and package this so that we can be able to bring that into the modern day education, I think we will be able to do much, much more than just building canoes. To me, I started off as a hobby and it's an art. Now I'm addicted to it. I'm hooked. The education part of it. I'm learning some stuff. I'm learning stuff about myself. Yeah. I didn't even know I can do this. I learned something that I'm good at something. I'm creative. I can do this. This is art. And I only wished I had discovered that a bit more earlier on in life. And so there's so much that you can learn. Like I said before, everything that you want to learn about, you learn here. It's all there. And that is what I want to capture and package to be able to take as many of our kids with me on this journey.
Yeah, and we sure need to get there in Ōtara. I don't know, I think you and I were talking yesterday about, what the numbers are of the kids that are disengaged in, I don't want to call it traditional education, the 20th century education, but we know that at Ōtara it's a huge number.
Absolutely. Just from the context of families that I work with, a lot of the children, a lot of the families that are affected in a way that it's alarming rate, the amount of children that are not going to school, that are not engaged in education, any form of education at all. And for us who lives in this community, sees the problem firsthand, and we're not in a position to be a part of it. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to take a different direction and look at it, because I know I can influence our children to be involved into education. Not that they don't want to go. I think it's just sometimes it's just irrelevant. Sometimes it's they just don't fit. Children today are different, and we need to change the way we educate them. It's time for change. It's just I was one of those. I was considered dumb, naughty, all the negative things that you can say about it. I have it all. In fact, I won one year award for being the dumbest, but had tried my best. But they said in my language that sounds even worse, which I had a confrontation with my mother that changed my life totally. And so I decided I'll be the dumb. But they didn't know, and I didn't know myself, that when I'm in a workshop doing practical things, I will get an A+. Anything to do with the practical, I think with my hands, and I can make it work. And but when it comes to sit down in the classroom to talk about English, maths, then my brains could not comprehend that. And so I see so many of our children in that situation. It's not that they're naughty and dumb. It's just that type of teaching, of education, does not suit. I thrive when I was doing planting or doing anything with my hands. I'll get A+ all the time. And so that gives you something. I mean, I had to learn very quickly when it comes to practical things. And so that's why these things happen. I built these photographs so I can click on and build it right to the exact. And so I see kids that are growing. I see myself. I'm teaching at the moment children in a school who are considered the naughties, but I see myself in them. And they can think differently.
Yeah.
They can do things differently. So,
Yeah.
education is my
That's the thing. So,
word of the day.
if you think about that class that or the kids that you've been teaching, does it actually work in that formal traditional school environment? I mean, that school's a forward-thinking school, that they've got you doing this in the first instance, but can we deliver this sort of, what I just wrote down, the Walker journey to A+. So it's about every child succeeding, but also succeeding on their terms, which is, succeeding on their traditional cultural terms, which is a much stronger definition of success for an individual or a community.
Yeah.
And that's what excites me every time I sit down with you, really. I see that you're navigating that journey for this community and how lucky we are.
I think, that just from what I have seen in the kids that I work with, the environment that I created an environment where it'll capture their interest. And straight away, it's happening already in that they want to do it. Take the garden projects, for instance. I mean, gardening is not everybody, but what I saw is all children that I had worked with wants to dig. They want to learn and understand and know what it's like to plant veggies in it. Mm-hmm. Most of the kids that I had worked with, none, all want to do things. And so I think the environment that we have in a school system, it's okay for certain kids, and it's okay for certain subjects, but it has to be more out there in the workplace, more out there in the practical world, to do things practically, to learn to do things practically. The experience that I have is that many kids who wants to do things and want to engage in it, because in that process they learn about stuff, and I can be able to explain, not that I understand maths and physics and all that stuff, but a little bit that I have learned, I can be able to tell it to them from my perspective, and they can relate to that very quickly. So I think that changing the way we do things, how do we educate our children today? And targeting specifically those who got a lot of energy. They're not naughty. I just had lots of energy. I just want to do things all the time. Work, go and work. So when it comes to sitting down in the classroom and doing very little other than trying to memorize and remember all these things, I have difficulty doing that. Doesn't seem to make sense to me until I get my hands into something. Then I can understand what's 2 + 2 is. Yeah. I can understand what all these things that I couldn't understand in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so, everyday education for our kids is right out there in the community.
I keep thinking I want to ask you to introduce us to the different whaka and tell us which ones they are as part of this. The learning for the journey. Mm-hmm. Can you help us with that?
Okay, the first, let's start off with the Tuvalu canoe. I built it off a photo, and when I had them on display recently, a Tuvalu couple walked past and they saw their canoe without the name written on it. They saw their canoe, and straight away they said, "That's our canoe." They straight away connect with it. And so we were able to have conversation, and I asked them if, from their perspective, is there anything they need to change, because I built it with the photo. And they gave me a great approval, because, they have a tail.
Took your A+.
Yes. They gave me an approval, and also explained the differences between the canoes, and I told them, I said, from what I know, so there I learned about their history and understand from how they built it that way, why they built it that way. So that was very good. Mm. And of course the next one is the puka puka. Cook Island. When I built
This
that
guy
one,
in the middle
I
here.
built it off for photo, and I connect with the Puka Puka community and asked the gentleman there, because they straight away recognized when I walked in. They said, "What are you doing with that canoe?" I said, "I come here for you to critique my work." And came here, looked at it and said, "Yep, that's our canoe, all right." And then we can talk about their history, and told me some things that was fascinating for me. Gives me even more determination to get into it more, because there's a small population of Niuean that is made up of people from the Puka Puka, and so I'm fascinated about that. And then this one here,
There's a bit of travel between. Yeah.
and then of course this one here is the Niuean canoe, which is the 6, very rare. 6 man. I saw back in the 60s in my younger years, and I still remember it. So I built it to what I saw back then, but also with an understanding that some of these canoes, especially the Cook Island one, all of them, if you build them long and big and long, you can put a sail on it, and that's how they travel, long distance. They just put a big sail on it and put a whare in the middle, and they travel from island to island, which eventually that is going to be part of the plan. We will be building sailing ones. This one here at the back is the Fijian one. It's the Kamakau. I had fun. Building that one, and because I've only built it from what I saw on the photos and what I've read from the books, and again I read and understand the history of the Kamakaus and learned some very interesting facts in regards to how they built this and how it's built that way, and the relationship between the islands, because some islands don't have very much wood, and
Of course.
so they, like for instance, the gentleman told me at the Puka Puka group is that to build a canoe for them is they're going to cut down about 3 or 4 trees to make one canoe. And I guess that's one of the reasons why we don't see them today. We only see them in museums, because there's not much wood around to build these beautiful.
What kind of wood were they made from? In the Cooks?
They have their own wood that grew in the Pacific, particularly with the oil. It has to be for it to float well and handle the elements. So I don't know the particular trees they have, but I know for Niue, because I saw and experienced and see some of the timber that they cut for that. So, yeah. So I've got the Hawaiian canoe, the Samoan canoe, the Tongan canoe, Tahitian canoe, and I have one more to complete the Pacific canoe lots. Is the Tokelau. That's in the making. Yeah, and of course Maori canoe, and then once I finish the Polynesia, that's the Polynesia side. There's the Melanesia, there's the Micronesia, huge territory.
You need some help.
Yeah, so that's the plan for 2023, is to be able to learn and understand and how our people, in their creativeness, how they do things way back then, before the technology came. How do they travel with no GPS? None of this stuff. No compass, and they just purely read the sun, the stars, and the moon, and all this stuff, and the current, the birds, and everything in the environment, and they just off they went. And while I was learning this, I feel myself getting caught up in that. That I would love to one day, maybe, before I get too old to, is to build a waka and travel. And learn, and how they learn. So, yeah.
It's amazing. So it's a journey for you as a person, and then the journey that you'll share for this next generation of kids coming through. So we just need to work on the package.
Yep. And yes, definitely. And that package is education is the thing that I'm very strong at the moment.
Yeah,
to think of a way how to educate our children, to be able to read, to be able to comprehend and understand things. And so, yeah, that's what I'm packaging at the moment as a journey forward, how to navigate our way forward with the wakas. And
as you're saying, like it's the journey in the practical world,
Yeah.
so that there's already always an application, and
Yeah.
and the so-called 3 R's or whatever else
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
expecting our kids to come up with. That follows almost, doesn't it? Because you're creating this will to learn and a
Yeah.
thirst for learning and an excitement about learning
yeah,
for the first time for many of those kids, and maybe even for their parents.
definitely. I think from what I have learned through the canoes in the short period of time that I have had it out, the parents, they're fascinated. They want to know more about their history, especially, when they see your canoe. It brings something out of them. I also watch the old people. They're the only ones that saw their canoes straight away. The Samoan couple, elderly couple, as soon as they see the canoe, you can see the smile. That's our canoe. And I get a buzz out of that. They recognize it's their identity, it's their culture. And then to explain why it's built that way, because the Samoan canoe is completely different in the shape, how it's created that way, and the name for it. So they have a lot of history to tell, and that I love, and also to capture that generation before they pass on, because they still have some that has not been passed on. And so
It's an important piece of the package, isn't it? That,
Absolutely.
That our old people come and almost introduce the conversation.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a whole family.
Yeah.
It's a journey of the whole family. It's learning about their culture, about their identity, and understanding of the great navigators of the past that had died and hasn't been passed on.
Yeah.
And so I see it as people had looked at the canoes and how beautiful they are. My question to them is, can you pick out your canoe where you come from? Not many can see their canoe, because they're all distinguishedly different. They're all completely different in one form or another, and why they're built that way.
So can you explain some of the key differences here?
For instance, the Niue is only one model, and it's only built because Niue is just one big rock, and they're just built for fishing.
So this is what they catch the tuna with?
Yeah. And so this is more for big sea fishing. This is a bigger version, and a shorter version for just the one person, just for their fishing. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Cook Islands, the Samoans, the Tonga, they have lagoons. And so they build canoes specifically for the use of lagoon, safe. But if they want to go out into the open waters, they build a bigger canoe. The same with the Fijians, the same with most of the islands that has had lagoons, and they have a canoe that can use for recreation just in the safe waters. But if they want to go out to catch the big fish, they build the big stuff like this one here.
So how many guys fit
You can
typically
build
in a book?
6. You can have anything from You can build a single, a double, or however many that you want to fit in it. And also the availability of the wood. If they have enough wood to build a big canoe.
Yeah.
So,
did that have an impact on the Great Migration? Who came?
Yes. My first thought was that they build double hulls. But yes, they do double hulls, but also they come on single hull, like family members. Just a group of family. They decided we're going to be going. And so they built smaller canoe and travel. So it's much, much more. And the different varieties. And some of the canoes we haven't seen today because they don't build them anymore because of lack of wood. And all that people know today is the basic just for fishing and that. But according to the history and Captain Cook's artist and some of the drawings that we saw, we haven't seen those canoes. They were very creative canoes.
It's amazing. In terms of rowing, paddling, the waka, these guys are these are the steerage.
The guy at the back, is normally the guy who directs, who steers.
But isn't this 2 steerage points, or is that just a paddle at
the guy
front?
in the front is like the leading person that gives direction on where to go. The guys at the back, the workers kind of, but the leading person in the front. But most of them understand and know exactly what to do. So that's their life. They fish every day for food, and so they understand how to navigate their ways around. And it's all family affairs. Yeah.
I'm sure I told you about our own family navigation exercise at sailing with my brother across the Pacific.
Yeah.
And we had 8 days without seeing any land.
Yeah.
But I guess I had a couple of moments there, epiphanies. One of them that actually it only takes 8 days to sail across the Pacific. And yes, we had some fancy navigation, but it was very evident that, I guess that was the other thing, was very evident where we were going to me.
Yeah.
Well, I had the night watch because I got the short straw. But, the Milky Way, and we could see all the planets.
Yeah.
The Milky Way was there.
Clear.
And as long as it was, on the starboard side of the boat, then we were fine.
Yeah.
And that was known. You could tell it was known, of course.
Yeah.
And so I guess those are 2 things. It caused me a lot of tears. But quite nice to have that profound insight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I often, and I guess one day before I get too old to do it is to get out there in the open. And that's my dream, is to build a canoe so that you can get out there and experience that.
Yeah.
It'll be a great
Well, just
feeling
imagine doing that with the kids.
Yeah.
Well.
Just,
yeah.
And I guess that's what a lot of groups now that are slowly getting into that, it's a great thing.
Are there any successful models teaching in this sort of cultural way happening in New Zealand at the moment?
I'm not sure about what's happening in it. In my travels, I have not come across anything that has really gone into depth in regards to learning and understanding about our waka journeys and learn from that. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get into it, because when I first started, people had asked me, and because they have not seen, they want to. There were groups who wants to. I remember one in particular from the Justice Department. They were looking around for a group to put their some of their kids in. They couldn't find any, and then they heard about us, and then they traveled from west to here. And one particular boy that I connect with told him about his history, his Samoan side that he knew nothing about. And then we built a canoe. Built a nice little model of the Amatasi Samoan canoe. And put it on a nice stand. And we gifted it to him in his graduation. So I think that changed his life.
Yeah.
He learned about his culture and his identity and who he is.
And a taonga to show him the way forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something to remind him. So
Yeah. So is that where Sully Paea is going for the future?
that's exactly where I'm heading.
Let's build that.
I'm already in the waka, and I'm already in the plan is that eventually we're going to build the big stuff so that we can paddle the Ōtara Creek, and it'll end up with down at the Ōtara Lake, and that's where Ōtara Lake and what is it called Waterways and Lake Trust comes in.
Yeah.
We want to be able to develop something here that you can see the Māori wakas and all the wakas of the Pacific.
Have a whole range of whare waka.
Yeah. As an education project to showcase and to teach our kids about our history, our lost history. And so we build it ourselves, and we're going to learn to paddle ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's our vision, to help them to find themselves by getting connected with their roots, their DNA, and our creative ancestors that had forged a way for us. We shouldn't be lost. So this is my way of helping them to find themselves. And to me, education is top for me. And so this is my way of being able to help our children with their education and helping them to move forward.
Yeah. And succeed.
Yeah. And so, and not only just in the classroom, but in a practical way. We're going to build the big stuff, and then we're going to head off to the Waitemata Harbour and say, look at us.
Down the hour, out into that harbour.
That's it. That's, So that's my way forward for education for our children.
It's a great challenge for our political leaders. Maybe we should, we certainly should be shouting it from the rooftops, really, because, if not that, then what for our kids that aren't going to school?
Exactly. Well, we as community, we've got to do something.
Yeah, we do.
And the saying that Ōtara has is that our community, our responsibility. And I think this is, in a small way, what I'd like to do in helping our tamariki to navigate their way through to the future.